when will India, this is my first question, sir, when will India have a robust data privacy law that we can be proud for? And I want to tell my audience, just a little while ago, IRCTC, which is a company under his supervision, has withdrawn a tender for monetization of user data. Sir.
So the data protection bill, that's in works, and I think we should be seeing the results very soon. If you see the journey of this bill, when the Joint Parliamentary Committee suggested a series of amendments in a bill of 99 sections, there were 81 amendments suggested. Then there were about 17 major recommendations on top of it. So we had no choice but to redraft it. Redrafting is practically done, and Honorable Prime Minister has said that even though there is a very long series of consultations which have gone, still we must thoroughly consult with the people, with all the stakeholders. So very soon we will be uploading the revised draft, which will be meeting your expectations and meeting that from entire country. There is an expectation that the bill should be very neatly drafted, it should be easy to understand, it should be relevant with the times, it should create that online environment where trust and safety of the users gets the primacy.
If trust and safety of users has to have primacy, what about all the data that has been lost so far? And we keep hearing about incidents. What would you say are the touchstones that this proposed law will have?
So, three fundamental things. First and foremost is the users have a right on their data, right? So how that data is used, what is the consent mechanism which is there, that's the first and foremost. Second is the established principles of, let's say, purpose limitation, the other things which have got so well established all across the globe, those should be very much ingrained within the bill. And third most important thing is, how do we make sure that every person in this country, every citizen of this country is able to access the grievance redressal mechanism in a very simple and very highly accessible way. So the entire implementation should be born digital. It should be born digital. We are not only looking at the revamping the data sector, we are also looking at revamping the other sectors which basically support the data economy.
5G Bharat, it is reality. You have yourself announced October. How will India benefit from 5G 5-10 years down the line? Not immediately, because it's going to be a creamy layer proposition, perhaps in the initial few days, although Mr. Mittal will try and Mr. Ambani will try and do their best to make it a mass proposition. How will the average Indian benefit?
First of all, it will be a mass proposition. Not only the two private sector telecom service providers, but BSNL will also roll out its 5G in the coming 18 to 24 months, for sure, right? That's first. Second is, the big difference that 5G will bring, it will be in two sectors, education and health. The entire education sector, which today considers digital as somewhat connected and somewhat like, okay, this is the central piece is education, now there is something digital I can build around it, right? That will reverse. Digital will be the core and the education sector will be built around it. Same thing will happen in the healthcare sector. These two sectors are going to make a very big difference in the lives of 130 crore Indians, and especially the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, who are at the most remotest parts, at the margins of the society, the people who are from our political thought process point of view, who are the most important people for whom we exist.
Many of the telecom pioneers, the private sector pioneers in India started off with manufacturing. Bharti with phones, Mr. Mittal also did gensets, others did phones and a lot of equipment. Ericsson still does a lot of equipment out of India. What's the goal for Atmanirbharta in telecom? Obviously the security reasons are understood by everyone, the China factor. What is your own sense about how Atmanirbhar will India be when it comes to electronics, IT and telecom sector?
Very, very important question. I'm glad that you asked it. 2014. If you look at that period, we had hardly any electronics manufacturing. Forget telecom equipment, forget cell phones. It was not even thinkable. People were not even considering that India will ever become a player. What is the electronics manufacturing today? Close to 80 billion US. Close to 80 billion US. What is the number of people employed in the electronics manufacturing sector? Close to 2.5 million people employed in electronics manufacturing. What is the rate of growth of this industry, electronics manufacturing in India? Double-digit CAGR, and we think that in next 4 years, 5 years, this will become a 250 billion. Industry thinks that this might actually exceed 300 billion. It might actually exceed 1 crore employment in the coming 4 to 5 years. That is the growth story, and we should not just stop at that. We are now tweaking our policies to have more and more IP getting into those products. Not just manufacturing, but design also. We lost out the race in 2G and 3G because of various reasons, and mostly the political will was not there. 4G we caught up, 5G we should be able to stand up with the world, but 6G, Prime Minister has given us the clear mandate, we should become the leaders in the world.
I want to start by asking you about the here and the now, which is about 5G. Everyone watching you on all of our platforms of business today and India today would be keen on knowing if 5G hamara kab aa raha hai, when does my phone go from the current 4G service that it has to a 5G, how soon do we start, and what does this mean to everyone who's listening to you at this moment?
Well, I think 5G is now, as we all know, around the corner. We are in almost full readiness, I would say. And if you really look at the world, 5G has now started to take roots, real roots in most of the Western world, Southeast Asian countries. Singapore, in fact, was the last one to go and start its 5G. So I think some people think India is late. India is not late. In fact, it's the perfect timing. Some use cases are being developed. You can see devices coming through, prices of devices started to fall down, which perfectly suits a country like India. So I think we are ready. Thankfully, this time, the government put up a lot of spectrum, because 5G requires very large chunks of spectrum to be effective. Otherwise, you don't really get the true joy of 5G. And not only the mid band, which is the C band, came through, the millimeter wave also was put out. So all in all, I think India is now ready from the spectrum point of view. Equipment is now pretty standard and available. We have been building for this day for the last 24 months. I had predicted that we will launch sometime in the second half of 22. Some of the competitors felt it could probably come in 20 end or 21, but I knew that this takes time to really develop into an ecosystem. So we are ready. Expect, as the minister said, launches beginning from October. It could even be from very early in October, but sometime in October, you will start to see on your phones, if they are enabled for 5G, a 5G icon coming on your phones. We'll start with big cities, the key towns, and then keep on, as we have seen in the earlier 4G or 3G avatar, keep on then proliferating right across the country and going into the deep hinterland. What will it do to us? I mean, today I travel around the globe. Am I, as a mobile customer, really looking for 5G? The answer is no. But there are very important use cases which are developing around the globe, which to my mind are game changers for our country. Robotic surgeries, deep healthcare management in rural areas, distributing our centers of excellence. Don't build a mega facility in Mysore by Infosys, because scale is not important anymore. You can have 100 centers distributed in the country so that the employees can be working very close to where they are and get the same experience they would have got when they were in Mysore. Holograms, virtual rooms, virtual teaching, experiments, participative experiments, everything can be done through a distributed way because of 5G. Now, in simple terms, what is 5G? For everyone to understand, as we moved from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, in simple terms it meant you could put in much more throughput capacity, so you could have very large amounts of files going through it, and importantly, data will be on steroids. So every time you go to the next technology, you are adding more steroids. So in 5G, you will have 10, 15, maybe even 20x speeds that you experience in 4G, and you can put a ton of capacity because the spectrum chunks are very large. But two important factors that come along with 5G is something that we as industry has been waiting for a long time. I can now slice and dice. If you are a particular customer of a particular need, I can give you a different speed, and everybody sitting in this room can get a different speed. Now, this was not a capability we ever had. So imagine a packet of data being delivered to Spotify to listen to music versus an autonomous bus driving school children. And on an intersection of a crossing, you have some emergency. How do you ensure that the packet that has to be delivered to the autonomous bus reaches there in milliseconds, as opposed to somebody taking and hogging away the bandwidth for a Spotify music? Now that can be done in 5G. The second part is latency. Latency means the speed at which you can respond to the needs. If a robotic surgery is being done and the patient, while being dissected or being worked upon, has a bleed. Now if it is a remote surgery and you can't respond, the surgeon can't respond in good time, you're going to lose the patient. In this case, the latency is so low, less than 10 milliseconds, that you are virtually sitting next to him. So these are the two very important parts.
Do you have pricing plans in mind yet? I'm sure you do. Could you share them with us from a customer perspective? How much more do I need to pay for my 5G service versus my 4G service?
Well, for the industrial use cases, I think pricing will not be so relevant. It will be really solution-oriented, and you will price it for solutions. People will take on industrial level, enterprise level, and those programs are very different. If your question is, what will it mean for you as a customer or everybody else here? I think not a meaningful change. You will consume more data, therefore you'll end up paying a little bit more. And frankly, if India has to be a digital nation, you need healthy telecom companies. They are the backbone, the spine of the digital connectivity. And the current tariffs, and I've said this many times before, are still very, very low. For $2.50, when I tell around the globe that you can take 60 gigabytes of data a month, they're absolutely horrified and shocked that how can you even survive in that atmosphere. We do, as you know. But do we need to go to $40, $50 like the Western world? No. Maybe we need to get to $3, $4. And if 5G can do that, it will only make the industry more sustainable, be allowed to sort of put more money into innovation and investment, get more use cases faster, and I think there will be a very small cost to pay. Distributed costs for over 1 billion people, paying $1, $1.50 at the upper end.
India at 75, but we want to achieve global leadership in the next 25 years. What do you think will be the shape, color, size of India's aviation industry in 25 years? Because every developed economy in the world has a powerful, massive civil aviation infrastructure attached to it.
Let me delve a little bit in the recent past before we talk about our present and before our future. In 2013-14, we had 74 airports in our country. Today, in a span of 8 years, we have built out an additional 67 airports, water ports and heliports. So we've gone from a number of 74 to 141. We have almost doubled our number of airports, water ports and heliports in India. If you look at fleet size, in 2013-14, we had roughly about 400 aircraft in India. Today, we're inching close to the 700 number. I believe we're somewhere between 692 to 694. We're going to add capacity at the rate of close to 15% per annum, which means you're soon going to see a fleet in India close to 1,200 to 1,500 planes. Capacity expansion as far as airports are concerned, in the next 5 years, we are looking at a capex plan of close to 97,000 crores, purely on airports. That covers the state-owned Airports Authority of India, which has a very aggressive brownfield as well as greenfield program. Close to about 42 airports on the brownfield side are being upgraded, new terminals, capex of almost close to about 30,000 crores odd. We are building out 3 new greenfield projects, Holongi, Dholohera, Hirasar, another 3,500 crores. And equivalently on the private sector side, brownfield, again, expanding 7 current airports, close to about 34,000 crores, and building out an additional 4 new greenfield projects close to about 31,000 crores. So that is the thrust. Now, why is that happening is going to be Siddharth's next question. And the reason why that's happening is really simple. You have a country of 1.3 billion people. But pre-pandemic, we had only 144 million flyers in India. If you look at the railways, which is, I believe, our closest competitor, only in the region, and I'm taking a segment of the railways. I'm not taking the whole transportation system of the railways, because I'm looking at an apples-to-apples comparison. If you look at only the air-conditioned part of railways, so only first AC and only second AC. So first AC and second AC, pre-pandemic, we had close to about 185 million travelers. So the delta between civil aviation and railways is roughly about 40 million travelers per year. However, the important point here is if you look at the CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate, the CAGR for railways is close to about 5.6%, whereas the CAGR for civil aviation is close to 10.3%. So therefore, it's my prediction that in the years to come, it may take us another 5 years, 7 years, but in the years to come, you're actually going to look at the number of travelers in civil aviation becoming pretty much the bulwark of air-conditioned travel in India as a means of transportation. Pre-pandemic, we had, as I mentioned, 144 million domestic travelers and 60 million international travelers. What's my forecast? My forecast is in the next 5 to 7 years, that number of 200 million is going to grow to 400 million travelers. That's the kind of delta in growth that you're going to see in the civil aviation business.
At the Business Today India at 100 Economy Summit, I'm delighted to welcome the Minister for Human Resource Development, one of the most important portfolios in any government, Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you, Rahulji.
I want to start with the here and the now. On account of the pandemic, many school-going children have been impacted and pushed back in their formative years on very critical learning outcomes. All the data seems to be suggesting that. As Minister for Education, what are you doing here and now to ensure that you can catch up on these lost years so that we lay a foundation for the next 25 years?
Rahulji, this is a very pertinent question we are facing in the present time. Due to COVID, due to pandemic, almost all 2 academic sessions, there is a severe learning loss. Schools were closed, the online facility were not in all part of country. This is a reality. We have to accept that. Education being a concurrent subject, respective state governments and union government, both are facing very severe kind of challenge in this area. Main challenge how to, already this year the class has been started, it is on the normal course work, but the last 2 years, in all the classes there is a learning loss. 2-3 innovative model I could mention in front of you. Reducing the syllabus, creating a new pedagogy, creating some extra classes, adding some extra classes, and altogether new approach to this learning loss area. State like Karnataka, state like UP, state like Assam, and board like CBSE. They are bound to do some reform in compulsion, like they could not organize examination in last 2 years, the board examination. This is a loss. How do we recover that? I cannot, very candidly, I cannot say this much time will be needed, because in the early stage, those who joined in the class 1, they directly go to regular class in class 3. They lost the experience of school 2 years. So this is a unique challenge, but the way post-pandemic, when the class started, since last few months we are observing their performance. I think with some specific innovative strategy by all the states, every state have developed their own way of recovery on their area. I think We have to put best of our effort. I hope some improvement will be there.